The Assembly Hall of Meridian 7 was the largest structure ever built by the Unified Species Council. Its curved walls rose higher than any building on Earth, and its ceiling showed the real stars through transpanels. Thousands of seats filled the chamber, arranged in circles around a central platform where speakers addressed the galaxy. Daniel Porter had stood on that platform many times in his 30 years of diplomatic service. Today, he stood there again, but something felt different. The air was heavier. The eyes watching him were colder. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He wore the simple dark suit of Earth's diplomatic corps, without medals or decorations. Beside him sat Lisa Grant, his deputy ambassador and a former Navy captain. She was younger, sharper, with the alert posture of someone who had spent years watching for danger. Hi, Arbiter Vorath of the Kethvari delegation rose from his elevated seat. He was ancient, even by his species' long standards. His scaled skin had faded to pale gray, and his four eyes moved slowly, as if the universe bored him. "We have gathered to address the continued defiance of the human species," Vorath said. His voice echoed through translation devices worn by every delegate. For 30 cycles, they have enjoyed the benefits of council membership while refusing its responsibilities. Daniel kept his face calm. He had expected this. They maintain independent military forces, Vorath continued. They refuse to share certain technologies. They reject integration protocols that every other species has accepted. Councillor Serene of the Alari Consortium leaned forward. Her kind resembled tall, thin birds with iridescent feathers, and she was known throughout the galaxy for her clever manipulation of trade agreements. Perhaps the human ambassador wishes to explain why his species believes itself exempt from the standards we all follow? Daniel stepped forward. Counselor, humanity has never claimed exemption from anything. We have simply exercised the rights guaranteed to all member species under the original charter. The charter also requires cooperation, Serene said smoothly. Your people define cooperation very narrowly. We define it as mutual benefit, Daniel replied. Not submission. A murmur ran through the assembly. Several delegates from smaller species exchanged glances. Daniel noticed but did not react. Vorath raised one clawed hand for silence. The council has shown great patience. We have offered humanity every opportunity to integrate peacefully. We have overlooked their unusual customs and their strange attachment to independence. But patience has limits. He pressed a control, and a holographic document appeared above the central platform. This is the Integration Accord, Vorath announced. Humanity will place its military forces under Council command. Humanity will share all technological developments with Council archives. Humanity will accept Council governors on all colony worlds to ensure compliance. Daniel felt Lisa stiffen beside him. He kept his voice steady. And if we decline? Then humanity will face full economic sanctions, Vorath said. Your trade routes will be closed. Your colonies will be isolated. You will be restricted to your home system until you reconsider. You are giving us an ultimatum, Daniel said. We are giving you a choice, Serene corrected. Join the galactic community as true partners or stand alone. Daniel looked around the assembly hall. Thousands of delegates watched him, waiting for humanity to break. Some looked eager, already planning how they would divide human technology and territories. Others looked uncomfortable, but none spoke in humanity's defense. I request a short recess, Daniel said, to consult with my government. Vorath's thin mouth curved slightly. He thought he had won. Granted. You have 1 hour. Daniel nodded and walked toward the exit. Lisa followed, along with the rest of the small human delegation. As they walked, Daniel heard whispers from the assembled delegates. They will submit, someone said. They have no choice. Humans are practical, another agreed. They will see reason. Daniel said nothing. He kept walking until the great doors closed behind them. The human delegation's private chamber was small compared to the assembly hall, but it was secure. Kevin Walsh, their communications specialist, had spent hours sweeping it for listening devices. He was a young man with nervous energy, always checking his equipment. "We're clean," Kevin confirmed as Daniel entered. "And we have an incoming transmission from Earth, Priority 1. A holographic image flickered to life, showing Secretary General Maria Torres. She was a strong woman in her 60s who had led the United Earth government through 3 crises already. Her face was tired but determined. "Daniel," she said, "I assume you've heard their terms." "I have," Daniel replied. "They're not terms, Maria. They're a death sentence for human independence." "I know." Maria's image looked at something off-screen. "And there's more. Our intelligence services have confirmed that Kethvari warships have moved into position near New Virginia, Haven's Rest, and 3 other colony worlds." Lisa stepped forward. "They positioned forces before the negotiations even started?" "Yes," Maria confirmed. "And we've intercepted communications between council members. They've already divided our territories among themselves. This ultimatum was never meant to be accepted, Daniel. It was designed to give them legal cover for what they planned to do anyway." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed was still painful. "What are my orders?" He asked that. Maria was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not going to give you orders, Daniel. You're there. You see the situation. I'm giving you full authority to act as you see fit. And if I choose to walk out, then humanity walks out," Maria said simply. "We face worse odds. We survived an ice age with nothing but animal skins and fire. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived when we split the atom and pointed it at ourselves." She smiled grimly. "We will survive this too." Daniel looked at Lisa, then at Kevin. Both nodded. "We won't kneel," Daniel said. "No," Maria agreed. "We won't. But Daniel, if you walk out of there, do it with dignity. Show them who we really are." The transmission ended. Daniel stood in silence, gathering his thoughts. Lisa spoke first. "They're expecting us to surrender. They've probably planned a signing ceremony." "Let them wait," Daniel said. "We have an hour. I want to use every minute of it." He sat down and began to write. Not demands, not threats. Just simple words. Words that would tell the galaxy exactly why humanity refused to submit. When the hour ended, Daniel Porter walked back into the assembly hall. His delegation followed in perfect formation. The council watched with satisfied expressions, certain of their victory. They had no idea what was coming. The assembly hall fell silent as Daniel Porter walked toward the central platform. Every eye was on him. The delegates shifted in their seats, expecting to witness humanity's surrender. High Arbiter Vorath looked down from his elevated position with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had won before the game even started. Councilor Serene had already prepared the ceremonial documents. Other council members whispered among themselves about which human colonies they would claim. Daniel reached the platform and stood still for a moment. He looked around the vast chamber, taking in the thousands of faces watching him. Some were curious. Some were hungry. A few from the smaller species looked almost sorry. "High Arbiter," Daniel began, his voice calm and clear. "Honored delegates, I want to thank the Unified Species Council for 30 years of educational relations." Vorath's eyes narrowed slightly. Something in Daniel's tone did not match the words of surrender. "In those 30 years," Daniel continued, "humanity has learned a great deal about the galaxy. We learned about your technologies, your cultures, your histories. We learned about the principles that built this council and the rules that govern it." He paused, looking directly at Vareth. We also learned what happens to species that surrender their independence. We watched the Morvani give up their fleet for protection that never came. We watched the Sentinel worlds accept council governors who stripped their resources. We watched a dozen smaller species fade into silence after integration. The chamber grew very still. Several delegates looked uncomfortable. "You call it integration," Daniel said. "We call it something else." Councilor Serene rose from her seat. "Ambassador Porter, you are wasting the council's time with speeches. Simply sign the accord and—" "I am not here to sign anything," Daniel interrupted. His voice did not rise, but it cut through the chamber like a blade. "I am here to give humanity's answer." He reached into his jacket and produced a small data chip. He placed it on the platform's display surface, and a holographic document appeared above his head. "This is humanity's formal notice of withdrawal from the Unified Species Council." For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The words seemed to hang in the air, impossible to believe. Then chaos erupted. Voices shouted from every direction. Delegates rose from their seats, pointing and arguing. Voreth slammed his hand against his console, and a deep tone rang through the chamber, demanding silence. "You cannot withdraw," Voreth said, his ancient voice tight with anger. No species has ever walked out," Daniel agreed. "That does not mean it is forbidden. I have read the original charter, High Arbiter. There is no rule against departure, only tradition. And humanity has never been bound by your traditions." "This is madness," Serene hissed. "You will be alone, isolated. Your economy will collapse within a year." Daniel turned to face her. "Earth's economy existed for centuries before we met you, Counselor. We built our own ships. We grew our own food. We developed our own technology. We did not need your help then. We do not need it now. You need our protection," another delegate called out. "The galaxy is dangerous. Without the council, we will protect ourselves." Lisa Grant spoke for the first time, stepping forward to stand beside Daniel. "As we always have." Voreth leaned forward, his 4 eyes burning with cold fury. "You will regret this decision, Ambassador. When your colonies starve, when your ships run out of fuel, when your people realize how foolish their leaders have been, you will come crawling back." Daniel met his gaze without flinching. "Humanity has survived ice ages, High Arbiter. We survived plagues that killed millions. We survived world wars that burned our cities to ash. We survived splitting the atom and pointing it at ourselves." He smiled slightly. "We will survive being unpopular." A ripple of something unexpected passed through the chamber. Not anger, not contempt, but something else. Something that looked almost like doubt. "Our colonies are prepared," Daniel continued. "Our people are ready. We have spent 30 years watching and learning. We know what you plan to do with us. We know about the warships waiting near our borders. We know about the secret meetings where you divided our territories." Silence fell again. This time, it was heavy with guilt. "You thought we were naive," Daniel said. "You thought because we were young, we were stupid. You thought because we smiled and traded and talked, we did not see your true intentions." He shook his head. "We saw everything. We simply waited for you to reveal yourselves." Voreth's scales had paled to white. Serene's feathers had flattened against her body. Across the chamber, delegates avoided each other's eyes. "Humanity came to the stars hoping for friends," Daniel said. "We found something else. We found species that saw us as resources to exploit, threats to contain, or children to control. We found a council that spoke of unity while practicing domination." He gathered the data chip and returned it to his jacket. "So we are leaving. Not in anger, but in clarity. We will not beg for what should be freely given. We will not trade our freedom for your approval. We will not kneel." Lisa signaled to the delegation. One by one, the human representatives rose from their seats. "If any species wishes to deal with humanity as equals," Daniel said, "they know where to find us. Our doors remain open to honest partners. But we will never return to this chamber as subjects." He turned and began to walk toward the exit. Lisa fell into step beside him. The rest of the delegation followed. The great doors of the assembly hall opened. An afternoon light from the station's artificial sun poured in. Daniel walked toward it without looking back. Behind him, he heard whispers. But not all of them were hostile. A young Morvani delegate watched the humans leave. His species had surrendered to the Council 200 years ago. They had been promised protection. They had received change. The young delegate looked at the humans walking out with their heads high, and for the first time in his life, he felt something strange stirring in his chest. He felt hope. The doors closed behind the human delegation. The assembly hall remained in stunned silence. Nobody had ever walked out before. Nobody had ever been brave enough to try. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of humanity's walkout, every species knew what had happened. News channels played Daniel Porter's words on endless repeat. Analysts argued about what it meant. Politicians gave speeches about the danger of human arrogance. But in quiet rooms and private homes, ordinary people watched the footage with different eyes. They saw a species that had refused to kneel. They saw something they had forgotten was possible. On the human colony world of New Virginia, Governor Amy Douglas stood in her office watching the same footage. She was a practical woman in her 40s who had spent 20 years turning a struggling outpost into a thriving world of 2 million people. "They actually did it," she said quietly. Her aide, a young man named Patrick Cole, nodded. "The Council has already announced sanctions. Full economic blockade starting in 72 hours. Amy turned away from the screen. Through her window, she could see the capital city spreading toward green hills. Families walked in parks. Children played in schoolyards. These people had trusted her to keep them safe. "What's our food situation?" she asked. 6 months of reserves, Patrick replied. "Longer if we ration. Manufacturing? We can produce most essentials locally. Some specialized equipment will be a problem, but our engineers are already working on alternatives." Amy nodded slowly. "It would be hard. It would be very hard. But it was possible. Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them New Virginia stands with the government. We didn't come this far to quit now." Across human space, similar conversations happened on a dozen colony worlds. There was fear, yes. There was uncertainty. But there was also something stronger. A fierce pride that surprised even the humans themselves. They had not known how much they valued their freedom until it was threatened. Now they knew. 3 light years from New Virginia, Commander Chris Bennett stood on the bridge of the destroyer Resolute. He was a lean man with steady hands and calm gray eyes. He had joined the Navy at 18 and had spent 15 years protecting human colonies from pirates and raiders. He had never expected to face a galactic superpower. "Report," he said quietly. His sensor officer, Lieutenant Paula West, checked her displays. Kathvari battle group holding position at the border. 12 warships, including 2 heavy cruisers. Any movement? Negative, sir. They're just sitting there. Chris walked to the main viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, alien warships waited. They had enough firepower to destroy his small fleet in minutes, but they had not attacked. Not yet. They're waiting for orders, his first officer said. Commander Nathan Hill was an older man who had survived 3 wars and countless skirmishes. The Council expected us to fold. They didn't plan for this, so they're confused, Chris said. For now, Nathan agreed. But that won't last forever. Chris turned back to his crew. 47 men and women watched him, waiting for guidance. They were scared. They had every right to be. But they were also ready. Listen to me, Chris said. I'm not going to lie to you. The situation is bad. We're outgunned and outnumbered. If those ships cross the border, we probably can't stop them. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. But I want you to understand something, Chris continued. This isn't about winning a battle. This is about showing the galaxy who we are. Humanity doesn't surrender. Humanity doesn't run. We stand our ground, and we make them think twice about every step they take. He pointed toward the viewport. Those ships out there? They're hesitating. You know why? Because they've heard the stories. They know what happens when you push humans into a corner. They know we fight harder than anyone expects. They know we never give up. His voice grew stronger. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand here, at this border, and we're going to make them afraid. Not of our weapons, of our will. A young ensign raised his hand. Sir, what if they attack anyway? Chris looked at him steadily. Then we make them pay for every meter they advance. And when the next fleet comes, they'll remember what the Resolute did. They'll tell stories about us for 1,000 years. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then, Lieutenant West straightened at her station. Sir, she said firmly, I didn't join the Navy to live forever. One by one, the crew nodded. Nathan Hill smiled grimly. Well, he said, I suppose dying of old age was always boring anyway. Chris returned to his command chair. All stations, maintain full alert. We're not going anywhere. Far across the galaxy, on the neutral station of Meridian 7, Daniel Porter was preparing to leave. His shuttle waited in the docking bay, engines warm. But before he could board, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Morvani, small and gray-skinned with large dark eyes. He wore the simple robes of a junior diplomat, and he moved nervously, constantly checking to see if anyone watched. Ambassador Porter, he said in a hushed voice. Please, a moment of your time. Daniel paused. Who are you? I am Thresh. Ambassador Thresh of the Morvani Collective. He glanced around again. I should not be here. If anyone sees me speaking with you, then speak quickly, Daniel said. Thresh took a deep breath. What you did in there? Walking out. Refusing to bow. We watched you. All of us. The smaller species, the ones who have been crushed under council rule for centuries. His large eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. You gave us hope, he whispered. For the first time in 200 years, we remembered what courage looks like. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. I didn't do it to inspire anyone. I did it because we had no other choice. I know, Thresh said. That is what makes it real. He pressed a small device into Daniel's hand. This is a secure communication channel. When the time is right, we would like to talk. The Morvani. The Sentinel worlds. Others. We are watching, Ambassador. We are waiting. Before Daniel could respond, Thresh had vanished back into the shadows. Daniel looked at the device in his hand. It was small and cold and heavier than it should have been. Humanity had walked out, alone. But perhaps they would not stay alone for long. He boarded his shuttle and gave the order to depart. As Meridian 7 shrank behind him, Daniel watched the stars and wondered what the future would bring. One thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same. 3 weeks passed, and the galaxy held its breath. The Council's sanctions hit hard. Human merchant ships were turned away from every port. Trade routes that had fed colonies for decades went dark overnight. Prices rose. Supplies dwindled. On a dozen worlds, humans learned to do more with less. but they did not break. On New Virginia, Governor Amy Douglas stood in a converted warehouse that had become the colony's new manufacturing center. Workers surrounded her, assembling equipment from salvage parts and local materials. "We used to buy these filters from the Ilari," Amy said, holding up a small metal device. "Paid twice what they were worth. Now we make them ourselves." Patrick Cole checked his tablet. "Production is up 12% this week. The new factory in Greendale comes online tomorrow." "Good." Amy set down the filter and looked at her workers. Men and women of every background had come together, learning new skills, working longer hours, refusing to give up. "What about morale?" "Strong," Patrick said. "People are angry, but not at us. They're angry at the council. Every time they see those Kethvari ships on the border, they work a little harder." Amy nodded. Fear could destroy a society, but anger could build one. The council had miscalculated. They had expected humanity to collapse. Instead, they had given humanity something to fight for. In the cold darkness of space, Commander Chris Bennett still waited at the border. 3 weeks of maximum alert had exhausted his crew. Sleep came in short shifts. Meals were eaten at stations. Everyone moved with the careful tension of people who expected attack at any moment, but the attack never came. "They're still there," Lieutenant West reported during the morning briefing. "Same formation, same position, no movement." Nathan Hill leaned back in his chair. 3 weeks. They've had 3 weeks to crush us, and they haven't moved. "They're afraid," Chris said quietly. "Of us?" Nathan laughed. "We have 4 destroyers and a handful of patrol boats. They have a fleet that could burn this whole sector." "They're not afraid of our ships," Chris replied. "They're afraid of what happens if they attack." He stood and walked to the tactical display. Red icons showed the Kethvari positions. Blue icons showed his own tiny fleet. The difference in force was almost comical. "Think about it," Chris said. "The council expected us to surrender. They prepared for peaceful integration, not war. Now humanity has walked out, and every smaller species is watching to see what happens next. So if they attack us," West began. "If they attack us, they prove we were right," Chris finished. "They prove the council rules through force, not law. Every species that ever wondered if they could break free will start wondering again." Nathan stroked his chin thoughtfully. "So as long as we stand here and don't give them a reason to shoot, they can't act without exposing themselves." "Exactly." Chris returned to his command chair. "We're not just defending a border. We're defending an idea. And ideas are harder to kill than ships." Across the galaxy, the council chambers that had once been filled with confident voices now echoed with arguments. High Arbiter Vorath stood at the center of a growing storm. He had promised that humanity would submit within days. Instead, weeks had passed, and the humans only grew stronger. Worse, their example was spreading. "The Morvani delegation has requested a review of their integration agreement," a council aide reported. "Denied." Vorath snapped. "The Sentinel worlds have delayed their quarterly resource shipments. They claim technical difficulties. Technical difficulties." Vorath's scales darkened with anger. "They are testing us. All of them." Councilor Serene swept into the chamber, her feathers ruffled with agitation. "Have you seen the latest reports? The humans are trading with independent stations. Stations we do not control. They are building their own supply networks. They cannot survive without us," Vorath insisted. "It is impossible, and yet they are doing it." Serene's voice was sharp. "Every day they survive makes us look weaker. Every day they stand defiant, more species question our authority. Then we attack," Vorath said. "We send the fleet. We end this, and if they fight, then we destroy them." Serene shook her head slowly. "You do not understand, do you? The humans are not like other species. They do not calculate odds and surrender when the numbers are against them. They fight. They bleed. They die. And somehow, impossibly, they keep fighting. Every species has a breaking point, Vorith said. Perhaps, Serene moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. But finding theirs might break us first. Have you considered what happens if we attack and they hurt us? Really hurt us? Not a victory, just pain. Just enough to make other species think that maybe, just maybe, they could hurt us too. Vorith stared at her. For the first time in centuries, doubt flickered in his ancient eyes. The humans have done something terrible, Serene continued. They have shown the galaxy that defiance is possible. If we cannot make them pay for it convincingly, absolutely, without any doubt, then others will follow their example. What do you suggest? Vorith asked. I suggest we wait. Apply pressure. Tighten the blockade. Let time do what our ships cannot. Serene turned away. The humans are strong, but they are young. They have not learned patience. Eventually, they will make a mistake. And when they do, we will be there. Vorith watched her leave, his 4 eyes narrow with calculation. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps patience was the answer. But somewhere in his cold heart, a small voice whispered that she was wrong. That humanity would not make a mistake. That they would only grow stronger and deep in space. Aboard the destroyer Resolute, Commander Chris Bennett received a message from Earth. Hold the line, it said. Help is coming. Not warships. Something better. Allies. Chris read the message 3 times, then deleted it according to protocol. He looked out at the stars, at the enemy ships waiting in the darkness, at the future that hung in the balance. Help is coming. He smiled for the first time in weeks. The galaxy was about to change. 3 months after humanity walked out of the assembly hall, Daniel Porter stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Open Hand. The ship drifted in neutral space, far from any council patrol routes, waiting. Lisa Grant stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the sensor display. They're coming, she said quietly. 7 ships. All civilian. Daniel nodded. His heart beat faster than he wanted to admit. 3 months of surviving sanctions, 3 months of watching the border, 3 months of wondering if they were truly alone, and now this moment. Open a channel, he said. The main view screen flickered to life. And Daniel saw a face he had last glimpsed in shadows. Ambassador Thresh of the Marvani looked different now. Taller somehow. More confident. His large dark eyes held a light that had not been there before. Ambassador Porter, Thresh said. We have come a long way to see you. The feeling is mutual, Ambassador. Daniel smiled. Welcome to humanity's corner of space. The 7 ships docked with the Open Hand one by one. Their passengers came aboard in small groups, each representing a species that had spent centuries under council domination. Daniel met them all. There were the Morvani, gray-skinned and gentle, their homeworld stripped of resources 200 years ago. There were the Sentinel peoples, 3 separate species from the Sentinel worlds, once proud warriors reduced to mining colonies. There were the Varathi, the Kessini, and the small delegation of the Hollow Moon, a species so oppressed that most of the galaxy had forgotten they existed. 7 species. Dozens of representatives. All of them had risked everything to be here. Daniel led them to the ship's largest conference room. It was not grand like the assembly hall. It had no elevated seats or ceremonial platforms. Just a simple round table with enough chairs for everyone. Please, Daniel said. Sit. They sat together, humans and aliens, equals for the first time. Thresh spoke first. 3 months ago, you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that it is possible to say no. We had no choice, Daniel replied honestly. The council gave us no alternative. "That is not true," said a Sentinel delegate, an older female with scarred gray skin. "You had the choice to submit. Every species before you made that choice. It was easier, safer. You chose differently." Lisa leaned forward. "We didn't do it to inspire anyone. We did it because surrendering would have destroyed everything we are. And that," Thresh said softly, "is exactly why it mattered." He reached into his robes and produced a small data crystal. "This contains detailed information about Council fleet movements, supply lines, and internal communications. The Morvani have been gathering intelligence for decades, waiting for the right moment to use it." A Vorathi delegate placed another crystal on the table. "Trade route maps. Hidden paths through sectors the Council believes they control. We have been smuggling goods for generations. Now we share that knowledge freely." One by one, each delegation contributed something. Manufacturing capabilities, scientific research, agricultural techniques, medical knowledge. 7 species, each bringing what they had, offering it to the whole god. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. This was not what he had expected. He had prepared for negotiation, for bargaining, for the careful dance of diplomacy. Instead, he found trust. "You're giving us everything," he said. Thresh nodded. "Because we want something in return. Not technology, not protection. Something simpler. Name it. We want what you have." Thresh's voice was firm. "We want freedom. We want dignity. We want to stand in the light again, as equals, without fear." The room was silent. Every eye turned to Daniel. He thought about Earth, about the ice ages and the plagues and the wars that had nearly ended humanity before they even reached the stars. He thought about the colonists on New Virginia, working day and night to survive. He thought about Chris Bennett and his small fleet, standing defiant at the border. Humanity had walked out alone, but they had never really been alone. They had simply been waiting for others to remember how to be brave. "You don't need us for that," Daniel said finally. "You never did. All you needed was to remember that you have the right to say no." Thresh smiled, his large eyes bright with emotion. "Perhaps, but it helps to have friends who remind you." Daniel extended his hand across the table. On Earth, it was a gesture of agreement, of partnership, of trust. He did not know if these species would understand it. Thresh reached out and took Daniel's hand in his own. His grip was gentle but firm. "Then let us begin," Daniel said. "Not as leaders and followers. Not as protectors and protected. As partners." Hours later, Daniel stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars. Lisa found him there, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. "They've agreed to everything," she said, handing him 1 cup. "A free alliance. No hierarchies. No integration protocols. Just mutual aid and mutual respect." "The Council won't like it," Daniel said. "The Council is falling apart." Lisa smiled grimly. 3 more species filed for review of their agreements yesterday. The Kethvari fleet withdrew from our border this morning. They're needed elsewhere to put out fires. Daniel sipped his coffee. It was bitter, but he did not mind. "We didn't win because we were strong. We won because we were stubborn. That's the same thing sometimes." He laughed softly. "I suppose it is." Through the viewport, he could see the other ships preparing to depart. They would return to their homeworlds carrying more than supplies and information. They would carry hope. They would carry the knowledge that change was possible. "You know what's strange?" Daniel said. "When we walked out of that chamber, I thought we had lost everything. Now I realize we just gained something better." "What's that?" "Friends who actually want to be our friends." He turned to face her. "That's worth more than any trade agreement or protection treaty. That's worth fighting for." Lisa nodded. "So what happens now?" "Now we build something new. something the galaxy has never seen before. Daniel turned back to the stars. An alliance based on respect instead of fear. Partnership instead of domination. Choice instead of force. The Council will try to destroy it, Lisa said. Let them try. Daniel's voice was calm but certain. We've proven that we can survive their worst. And every day we survive, more species will join us. Every day we stand, we show the galaxy that there's another way. The last of the Allied ships detached from the open hand and drifted away into the darkness. Their running lights flickered like distant candles, fragile but stubborn, refusing to go out. Daniel watched them go and felt something he had not felt in months. Peace. Not the peace of surrender. Not the peace of giving up. The peace that comes from knowing you did the right thing, no matter the cost. Humanity had walked out of the assembly hall with their heads held high. They had stood alone against an entire galaxy. And in the end, they had found something better than victory. They had found family. The stars seemed brighter now, filled with possibility instead of threat. Somewhere out there, new allies were carrying humanity's message home. Somewhere out there, other species were finding the courage to hope. And on the bridge of the open hand, Daniel Porter smiled and gave the order to set course for home. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had helped change it, not through conquest or war, but simply by refusing to kneel.